Hey, this is Loudon Gaming, and I am here to talk about the game I made for the 7-day roguelike challenge of 2023. I've already posted a video of me just playing the game, but now I just want to talk a little bit about the game, the process of making it. So I have Unity open here, and it's kind of doing something right now. So while it's kind of loading, uh, so first I'll start about how did I come up with the idea of the game. First I was just thinking about like what kind of uh, open world kind of RPG game could I make. That's kind of what I wanted to make, and I don't know I think was watching my son play Dark Souls. He was trying to speed run through Dark Souls. I started thinking about like the mythology of Dark Souls. Um, it has like gods in it, and it made me kind of think a little bit about like it'd be neat if my open world game had uh, gods that kind of was the backdrop for the story of the game, I guess. Um, I kind of thought like, well, it'd be kind of neat if those gods were like random and they randomly created the world that you're playing in. But I really couldn't think of anything besides that, and whether or not that would be even um, fun. Like, what would your character doing? Yeah, sure. There's these gods in this world, but like in Dark Souls, they don't really play an important part in your gameplay experience. I think you might fight some gods, but at least in the first one, the Lord of Cinder, I guess you fight them at the end. Anyways, so then I was reading this RPG book. I can't really think of the name of it, but I was just reading it, and it was talking about the different like religions of the world that it that you would take part of if you were playing the RPG. And um, so I was reading it, and it was kind of interesting how they talked about like the religious aspect of it, where if you were a follower of this particular god, you would have to, you would wear these certain clothes, you would maybe, give certain sacrifices, or maybe have certain rituals you would do. And so that got me kind of thinking of making a game where the gods, you're following the gods, and you had to, you know, do these religious kind of, you know, obey or not obey uh, what the god would be about. So, maybe the god would want you to wear certain armor, and if you weren't wearing that armor, you would maybe get like a curse or something. And if you did wear the armor, you would get like a blessing or something. I kind of didn't want it to be where what my game turned out to be, actually. Didn't want it to be where, all these, if you look at these stats, I mean, all these like gods, the god of the red crab, this is just affecting more character creation. And it doesn't really feel like the god is actually part of the world at all. Just as affecting what some stats for your character, which is not really what I wanted. I wanted to feel like the gods were more present in the world. Um, like even though you're maybe following this god, you know, the god would decide whether or not it would punish you for not doing the things you were supposed to do, or whether it would reward you, and it would randomly determine that based on how the god would be. I was thinking even like you would have to go and pray at the temple every so often, or give money to the temple every so often. But just like in kind of the real world, if you're being religious, sometimes you don't you don't perfectly follow that religion. Um, in this game, you could not perfectly follow that religion, and you could have bad things happen to you or good things happen to you. So that's kind of what I really wanted. I also wanted to where there'd be like different villages you would go to, and those villages would either worship the certain gods or not, and depending on the religion you were involved in, maybe uh, the attitude of those people would be different. And all of it would be kind of randomized, so you wouldn't really have a whole lot of control of it, but it would feel a little bit more like the gods were really more part of the world. That didn't really come out in the game, and obviously, as I'm talking about it, it's very big in scope for that idea. Um, so, anyways, that's kind of what I was hoping for, but and at first I thought maybe I could do it, uh, but it didn't really turn out that way. I thought I would have enough time to at least implement some of it. Oh, this is kind of interesting. Got all this beach, got like a forest, kind of neat map. We might start there then. Anyway, so that was kind of like the idea. I was also thinking of like based on the god um, you were following, you would have like a different magic that you could have. Let's get a spear. Um, different like, and I was going to have like the magic be random as well. Uh, so like if this was the god of the crab, if the crab was the animal, maybe it might randomly give you a magic spell that was related to the crab. Maybe you could summon crabs or even turn yourself into a crab, something like that. So there's going to be a lot more to the randomization of the gods, and I might put that in eventually. Let's see, what's my food? Apple pie. I got apples, but so anyways, that was kind of a little bit of the idea, um, and I didn't when I was making or coming up with the idea. Oh, that's interesting. I need to fix that bug. I did fix some bugs from the last video. I got the attack log showing. I got the range attack. I think in the last video I was saying I was getting attacked by invisible creatures, but they weren't invisible. It's just the range wasn't working correctly. It thought for an enemy, if it would like try to draw a line if it hit an object, it ended the line, and so then it thought that was the distance from here to anything that was in its way. It thought that was the distance, and so that's why it seemed like some enemies were attacking when really they weren't. I'm gonna zoom in a little bit. Man, the zoom. I don't know if it's this mouse or what, but yeah. So I kind of thought of the idea probably a month before actually the competition. So I thought I could do some of the stuff. I thought I would have enough time. I really only worked maybe 3 full days on the game. Oh, there's the crabs. They're not attacking me because we are friends. Um, I thought I could do a little bit more, especially since I was thinking, hey, I've done the rogue games before, so it shouldn't be. I could use some of the code from my previous games. I shouldn't have killed that crab. Previous games, and so like I was thinking, oh, I already know how to move characters. I've done, even the world generation. I've done world generations before. Random dungeons. I was going to have dungeons in the game too. I've done inventory. I've done all of it. And I thought all I gotta do is just put it in the game. Probably should have this font a little bit larger. I didn't think it would be that difficult to do, but it was, and some of that has to do with I was trying out a new kind of way to program it. So I have been watching some videos on the people who made Caves of Cod, and just one of the approaches that they took to programming was a entity component system, which I've seen those before. I've watched those videos before, and I've known about entity components system. For those that don't know, it's more of a, instead of like inheriting, um, doing an inheritance where you start with like maybe a human character, and then your let's see, I need to eat some food. Let's let me equip that. Based on, maybe you have a human character, and then a warrior, inherits everything from what the human base class is, and or you have a weapon, and then a spear is a weapon, or you have a melee weapon, and so everything's just inheriting from something else. A component system more just you have an entity, and then the entity just adds different components based upon what you want. Um, and then there's systems that they use to kind of run it or whatever. I'm going to show you a little bit about that. Uh, but so I think that's why it took a little longer to kind of implement some of these things, because it was really a different way of me for programming. It wasn't hard to create the system itself. I actually did some test programming before the competition, and I was able to figure out how to do it. I also used a lot of I use an event system, um, which is something I usually don't do either. But the the usually I use like singletons, and in this case, I was trying to get away from the singletons as much as possible. I did use a few, um, but so I think that's what kind of slowed down the actual programming. The first day I was programming, I thought I would get a lot done, and I just didn't, and I think that just put me behind the entire time. Um, oh man, this archer. Take him out. Actually, let's wait here. Let's have him move. Spear, yeah, punk. Let's get a little bit more strength. So that took a little longer. I'm going to show you what that looks like. These skeletons. So yeah, the entity system was. I was pretty proud that I was able to do it. And then I also did. I'm almost dead, but that's fine. I'll just go until I die. Let me eat. Yeah, I fixed a few bugs. When you go to the treasure chest, it doesn't give you cheese. It actually gives you the valuable items. I add the attack log. I add the reset game. Fix the. Oh man, those archers. I think range is a little OP in this game. Let's see. Let's get a little bit more speed. Maybe I need to have another stat for range attacks, like a chance of missing. So what is this? This is the beach, even though there's no water. Because look at the map. It made all this beach because this was almost like separate. That's kind of neat. So yeah, what was I talking about? I also did I think in my last video or my last games I made, I did scriptable objects, but this time I did XML documents, and so it would load the data through XML. And again, so that kind of changed things a little bit. Let's get more speed. I probably need to change this XP. It should probably reset. It should probably take the amount of XP you currently have, or whatever the last level is, and add it to it, because it doesn't seem to take long to level up. Was that a little bunny? Little bunny? So yeah. Well, maybe I'll just. What was? Oh, this archer again. Darn it. The beach is very good for archers. Because it doesn't seem to. Too many things are blocking your line of sight. There's an alligator. You have maybe clean up some of the graphics. They're hard to see. Let's see. What else did I kind of do a little different? But anyways, let me just stop playing out. Just kind of show it to you. So as far as the scenes go, I got 3 scenes. Got the main menu scene, then the character creation scene, and the encounter. And I'll just talk a little bit about some of the scripts I wrote. So here's like the entity system, and if I actually open this up, I might already have it open, maybe not. So basically, you have entity, and if it loads it, so the entity has a name, X and Y for where it would reside, and then it has this template. This template is kind of a way to inherit, basically, but copy any other entity's components into this one. I think that's what that's for. So I use the word template to mean 2 different things. So this was not a good name. So I have like an entity template that is used to create the entity, but then an entity can have a template of an entity template. So that's why this is like a terrible naming system. You can add a part to the entity. So we have a list of parts here. And those are basically the components. Unity itself is really a component-based system, and maybe this could have been just done in mono behavior and using components that way, but I just didn't make it with it. You can remove the parts. A little function to get a part from the entities using a string. So basically loop through the list and find that part. This could have been done by using a dictionary maybe instead, because right now you can have more than one part, so this is not a good use. You could use something like a set. I believe a set uses can only use unique things, add unique ones to it. And then you can unregister a part. You can, that's weird, unregister a part. Okay, no, this is unregister part. So this has to do with the event systems. So let's say an enemy dies, the entity gets destroyed from mono behavior. Well, the event system manager needs to then remove all of the events that the parts were registered. So this just loops through all the parts and unregisters any events that that part uses. So let's take a look at the part then. So that's the entities, and you add parts to it. So the part is right here. It knows its entity. But then it has 2 virtual methods here. One for registering events, one for unregistering events. So let's take an example. I think the very first one I did was called the hit points. So let me go to the hit points. H for hit points right here. So this overrides that register event, and it's going to register this event called, we're calling it the take damage event, and it's calling this method that the hit points has. So if another script fires the take damage event, it's going to then run this right here. And so this is for unregistering it. So it's basically removing this method from. There's a dictionary in the event manager that has the string and all of it, a list of all of the methods that it would call. So when this is called, when the on take damage is called, it's getting a game event script. And the game, in this case, this is where I do use inheritance because we have a certain type of game event called the take damage event, and we're changing this game event into that, which really it's not changing it, but it is, I guess, because of this. When you add a method to the event listener, it has to have this as the what do you want to call it? The parameter. It needs to have a game event. So this is how you kind of set it up, and then just take it and change it to the take damage event. And this game event is going to have variables associated with it. So in this case, the take damage event has an entity. Actually, probably all game events have it. And so when this one's get triggered, we want to make sure that this entity is the actual entity that's supposed to take damage, because when this fires, anything that has registered the take damage event, which would be all the entities that have the hit point part, would get called. And so you have to check to make sure that, hey, are we the one that are supposed to be taking damage here? And a little debug there, and it's just going to add the value. Because a hit point is actually a stat, so I do inherit this part from a stat, and stats are handling the adding the values and the modifying things like that. And then it will just check to see if you're dead. Now the thing that you could do here, which if you watch the Caves of Cud video, is that you could have this kind of in an order. So you call the event the take damage event, and then let's say we had a parts called the armor parts, okay? And so the take damage event might go through first the armor, and then the armor would do its thing on this take damage amount, and then it would send it finally to the hit points. So it would maybe change the value. Now, I didn't actually do that in my programming just because I'm like so not used to doing that kind of stuff that I didn't do it quite a bit in here, but it's probably something I could have done, and I probably should have done a little bit more. Um, or it could have been like maybe there's fire damage, so it would go through like that first, or I don't know, or like if I wanted like an invincibility effect, I would maybe add that part to the entity. It would go through the invulnerability, and then maybe it would take away all the damage amounts, which the take, like if you see here, the take damage event has an amount. So you can like modify this amount by sending it to other things first before it gets to the hit points. Now, in order for you to do that in the system, you have to make sure that the list, when things are added to the list of parts, is added in the correct order. So the hit points would have to be added kind of after an invulnerability. I don't really do that too much. I didn't really do that too much in that game. So that's kind of how that works, the entities and then the parts. And let me just show you what maybe how it creates an entity. So I do have a static class called the create entity manager, and it does a couple different things. It's going to open an XML document and create all the templates. So this is like load entity templates, and it's going to store them all into here. And this is static, so I don't have to like create this in the game. The problem with using statics is if you restart your game and go back to the original load scene, it's already going to have all of this. So I did kind of change that and got that to work, but I probably didn't do it the best that it should. But anyways, I probably just needed like a variable to say like is loaded, and then just put it here. So anyway, so first it's going to load all the templates, and it loads the XML file, and so loading this one right here, these entities, and I'll show you what that looks like. It loops through the nodes, and it's looking for the name attribute, and then it's looking to see if this entity has any templates. If it has a template, it's going to add that. Right now, in this case, it's just creating a script here. If I go to this definition. Whoops, actually go to this one. So if we go, this is the template, and all the template is storing strings, and then it stores this part template. Well, this is a part template, which is just more strings. Go to definition. Whoops. Yeah, this is just a dictionary of strings. So called parameters. So it's getting the parameters of a part. So like a parameter for a part could be like in the hit points, it has an amount value or a base value. And I'll show you what that looks like in a little bit. And then it does do some. If I go back to that create. I know this is quite a bit. I'm trying to go through it quickly. I did not record, like sometimes for some of the game jams I do, I record all of it, but I didn't record any of it because that would have slowed me down, and I had a lot I needed to do. So that's why I'm just going through it now. So anyways, basically what this is doing is it's loading an XML, and then it's putting them all into these entity templates, which are just strings. And then this is just all for adding template parts. But then we have this function called create an entity, which is going to return an entity based on an entity template. And this is where it's going through and first is saying, okay, are you a template of a, this is where like the naming convention is pretty bad. Does this have a template? So for example, I might have a enemy, or I might have an animal entity, and the rabbit would inherit, or not really inherit, but copy all the parts from an animal and add it to the rabbit. So I wouldn't have to keep doing over and over again parts sometimes, but you end up doing it anyways. But I'll show it to you in a little bit. But so here it's adding all the parts from that template, and then it goes to the rest of the parts that are in the entity template and creates all the parts. And so here in the create part, what it does is it finds the type of the part based upon the name of that part template, and then it creates a new get part from type entity dot get part from type. So here it's trying to say, do you already have the part? Because if you already have the parts, we're going to override the one. So override the one that was already existing. Because first it creates all the template parts, and then it creates its own part. But if it has the same part already, it's going to override it. So if this was null, then we're going to create a new one using this activator dot create instance. So this is how you can kind of create your own add scripts to things. And this is all through, I think you have to use using reflections for doing something like this. Basically, I'm taking a string and I'm going to I'm going to create a new script. Not a new script, but I don't know I'm not sure the correct terminology for that, but basically creating a variable based on that script. Where was I? a lot of this stuff, like I said, I practiced first before the competition because I didn't want to do this for the competition if I couldn't figure it out. Like I didn't want to spend like 3 days trying to figure out just how to do this when I already knew how I could do this a different way, using singletons and using scriptables and not doing this at all. Um, so blah blah blah, creating the part. So it creates it from the script. So it's basically creating that script. If it doesn't find it, we're just going to return and debug that. If it does, we're going to say that this entity is this, and we're going to say that we're going to add that part to the entity. Then after it does that, you can go through the fields of the script. So anything that's a public variable, we can reference that here. So this says get all the fields from the new type, which is that script that we're creating. So if it was the hit points, it would have the amount or the value. And then for each of those, it's taking that I told you there was a string of parameters. So the parameters would be it's like a string of strings. The first string would say what's the name of the parameter. The second string would be the value of that parameter. And then based upon whether it's an int, a float, or a boolean, so you need to parse it and check it, because in the XML it's just a string. So it needs to take the string and figure out, okay, what are you? It does all that. And then if it's none of those things, then it just saves as a string. And that's pretty much it for the create entity manager. So again, that was like my new way of kind of doing this program. It's pretty neat, and let me show you what the XML looks like. Again, a lot of this ideas I got from, well, it wasn't just like Caves of Cud, but there's another the rogue called Adam, ADOM. The creator of that, he posted a video where he explains how he does it as well. He uses JSON for his. So I was watching a lot of those videos, try to see how can I do this as well. So this is the XML, and here we have like a human, and the human has all these different parts. And so, part name, we have a script called sprite info, and then there's a parameter called sprite name, and then this would be the value. We have something called physics, which blocks we have a variable called blocks VOF, true or false, so this would be false, so you can look past the human. And the move cost, if you were to move into a human, the move cost would be 1. Then you see that part, the hit points, the base value for it. Again, this is a public variable that's on the script. It's actually on the script of all stats. So hit points, strength, speed, intelligence, endurance, dexterity, armor stat, hunger, these are all, and even XP, these are all stats. And you can set the base value, the minimum and maximum for that. XP, level, gold amount. So this gold amount is what you would start with. So in this case, humans can start with 100 gold. This is only for the purpose of character creation for the player. And then, so some other entities, we got NPC characters. Now, it's interesting, these NPC characters that you see in the shops, again, here they take on the template human, but they actually are never added as a acting entity, so they never take turns in the game. So I didn't want them moving. I could have had them because, for example, if I wanted them to kind of act, really, I could add something called part name equals AI. And then we do something like this. Part. So now this general shop NPC would have an AI. That doesn't necessarily mean it would take turns. It would also have to be added to the, there's a list of acting characters that my map controller takes care of. And so if it's not added to that acting list, that's why if you saw my other video, when I got to the quest marker, the Medusa wasn't moving and attacking me because the Medusa was never added to that acting character. But as you can see, my NPCs do not have an AI, so they're just static. Um, but they do have this part called the shop, and the shop has a random table. And I'll show you what this does. Kind of taking the idea from Caves of Cud, where they have I don't know what they call it, but it's kind of like a random. It's basically a random table. Um, so I have like an HTML that you can create these random tables, and so it's finding the one that says General Shop, and it can use that. So those are all the shops, and then here's the enemy. So enemy has kind of like a base class here, base entity, very similar to the human. The difference is, uh, and probably this could have in took took the template. If you want to do a template, just template equals human. Could have done that, and then this would take all those, and then but here's that part AI. And there's a variable on there called is hostile. So by default, an enemy would be hostile towards the player. And then all the other different stuff that has. But it also has a part here called drop item. So what it would drop if it dies, in this case, a random table called enemy drop 1. And then here's all the different enemies. And I could just go through here and change these stats in here. It's very heavily reliant on the way you name strings because it compares a lot of the strings. And so if it didn't find the string, this enemy would be basically invisible. So lots of different enemies. We also have animals. Really, this could have inherited just from the enemy if I wanted to do that. I could use these as like tags, I guess, as well. Look for anything that has the template of animal. So kind of does the same stuff. We got some drops things. Oh, this XP part is not the amount of XP that it has, but how much you would get for killing it. So those are the animals. Go down further, then we're getting to items. We have different. This one now has a part called weapon, and also has a part called price, and we can change all those different stats. And this is how it determines whether you can fight or not. I probably should have had something in here that is called like item part, just that because technically you could carry any type of entity, so you could carry a rat. Technically, you could. However, nowhere is it possible in my game to do that. So it's not like you're ever given an opportunity to carry a rat in your inventory, but technically your inventory can have that. So yeah, weapons, armor. Armor has a part called armor, so it uses that for things. And again, basically the armor part has a value called body part. So this is just letting the player, know where you can place that armor. Enemies and creatures don't actually have a part called armor, but what I do is they have a stat called armor stat, and so if I wanted to give it armor, I just do it that way instead of giving it an item. But an enemy AI can have a weapon, and so it can use the weapon to determine range or melee. So yeah, so there's the armor stuff. We got head and body. We have food, which does have a part called food, and that's going to have the value of hunger and HP. There's also another value on some of these things, but I don't use them. It's called God bonus. So during God creation, it changes that bonus for those things. I can show you that in a little bit. We got different items like the bones, just a price. Hide is just a price. So these things don't do anything. They just give you money if you find them. Then we got artifacts that you find in those treasures when you go to the quest, and these are the different ones and the value amounts for those. We got something else called containers. They have physical parts, but they also have this part called inventory, which is going to have a list of entities. And then there's an entity called drop container, and this is used for when you kill an enemy. It creates this drop container, and this is the sprite, that little bag, to let you know that you can pick something up from there. And then we also have one called treasure, which the treasure has another part called treasure, and it has a random table. And did I really do that? I forgot to change this again. This needs to actually. I think I hard coded this in the in it, and this should be instead of the random table general shop. That's why I was getting the cheese. It should be artifact. I think I hard coded that instead, which I shouldn't have. And what I could do, like if I wanted different treasures, like I could have a treasure that had different random drops, but then we have terrain. So these are all the different terrains in the game, and a lot of them are just physics. When it creates the world, it looks for like here's the grassland tiles. So this is like the floor of the map, and so if the world map tile is a grass, then the encounter tile floors would be grass. Uh, and then trees and different types of trees I have here, pine trees. Uh, there's not a whole lot to the terrain. The terrain just is getting that physics and saying whether we block line of sight or whether we do a move cost. Let's say, if later in my game I had like I don't know. Let's take the cactus for example. Maybe the small cactus you can actually move on it, so we would do like 0.5, and then I could always like create a park and call it name equals damage terrain or something like that. Now I don't have a script called that, but I could just create that, and then maybe it would have a value, and I would say 3 or 5, and then I would end the part, and so then this small cactus would have this part on it, and then maybe this part would there'd be some kind of event called take damage, part of the take damage thing. Um, so in my move system, basically, I would probably say, hey, does this tile have a damage part? If it does, send an event called take damage to that entity for this value. So that's how easy it would be to just add that to, actually any entity, but that's how it would be. That's how you would do it. Villages and dungeons. I never got to dungeons, but these are just other things like walls, floors. The This is for the village more. Doors. Doors actually don't open or close. There's nothing to them. They're just move cost is 0. So it's just showing a picture, and so you just walk through the door. All it does is just show the picture. It does block line of sight, so that's why I can't see in the past the doors, but you can walk through them. Eventually, I would probably add like another part called door that you could then interact with and open and close it, that kind of stuff. All right, so that's that for the entity part. So not too bad. I know I've been going kind of on a little bit while. I'm not sure what else I could show you. Let me just show you the random tables. So this is the XML for the random tables, and basically the random table is going to have a name, and it's going to have these choices. And I have another script that kind of creates these random there's a script called random table, and then there's another script, that a static one that actually creates them from this XML. And so here are all the different choices, and then I give it a weight. It adds up all the weights. So right now, if I just want an animal, random table animal, it just does 15. Everything's kind of equal. And this is actually, this first one is for determining the god traits. So the animal, and I would probably need to change that to like god animal, god stat. So that's all that does. And the way that the random table works is it adds them all up. It randomly picks one of them basically, and it returns a string. So it's going to return a string called strength, and then I can I can write a script that then says, okay, find the part named strength in the human, and then change that stat to add 2 to it, and that's basically what it does. Um, Here's like enemies, and then here's like some drop item tables. So animal drop 1. And again, it's just a string and then a weight, and that's all it does. You can see here we can also set a minimum and maximum to this table, and I use that mostly for here with my terrain table when I'm creating the different. Um, so when I'm in the grasslands, we have trees, tree 1, tree 2, and a rock, and maybe none. So there's a random chance that it doesn't pick either of these. And a 50 to 200. So when you go to like a screen, an encounter screen, it's going to pick a number between 50 to 200, and then it's going to loop through that and randomly pick from these options based on these things. Uh, we got encounter tables, which is really more the enemy. I should probably put enemy encounter table. So if you're in a grassland, it's going to pick between 5 and 10 enemies, and then randomly pick between these enemies. And again, it's just getting a string and then taking that string and creating a entity, from that list of entity templates, which has a key of a string. So yeah, that was all pretty neat. I did like how this all came out and worked. It is very flexible. There's still a lot that I probably need to learn when it comes to doing this type of programming, because sometimes I use the event system very well, but I think a lot of times I didn't. And I think the goal of doing a event system and an entity component system is to kind of decouple your code so that nothing's relying on anything. Uh, it just becomes a little tricky, and it's hard to kind of get away from the singleton kind of mindset a little bit, because it's like, how does an entity know what the map is? Because the entity it feels like the entity just always needs to know like the map. So how does it do that? Well, it has to send an event to somewhere, so it's it is a little easier using singletons because you can always access sometimes you can always access any kind of variable you want if you put them in these kind of singletons. I do have one singleton uh, called game data, and I did use it in a few places because after a while you get a little tired from programming and you're just trying to quickly do things, and it's a little bit quicker to use a. I think that's what slows you down too, because every time you want to do something with an event system, you have to create a new script for the event, fire the event. There's a lot of like registering the event, and there's a lot more extra lines of codes versus a static instance of game data. I can just start typing it in and use it. I did need this game data though, because every time you're going to a new encounter screen, it's reloading the scene. So the game data is never destroyed when you load a new scene, and this is storing important information like the player, um, all the maps for the world. So all those things need to be kind of stored and not lost, and that's what this is keeping track of all the random tables, all the god data, the world creator itself, uh, which is used for creating the world, so I don't lose that data at all. Um, oh look, add a little note. Change later. It's keeping track of the time as well. I think somewhere like yeah here. So setting the time based upon the minutes and stuff. I think it also keeps track of the game turns somewhere maybe, or maybe not. Maybe that's always newly created. I also have like a manager called Encounter. Uh, let's see if I can get that really quick. Encounter manager. So this manager does have references to all these other kind of all these other ones. I wonder if it actually has one to here. I don't. I guess so, but it does have all these. But I think nowhere outside of the encounter manager. If you notice, it's not a singleton, so nothing has a reference to the encounter manager. The encounter manager just has a reference to all these things, um, just so it can do things. And then uh, let's see on start. See, it has a reference to the battle system, and the battle system is see, this isn't a model behavior. Neither is the game turns. These are neither model behaviors. So something had to create these. And so the encounter manager has a script called battle manager and game turns. But this has never been called. This is only being called through events. I think the same thing with game turns maybe. So we register all the events for the battle manager. We're going to register these two events for the encounter, the changing maps and the setting time event. Okay, so this is how it's setting it. It's finding the world object. Sets up the encounter. It fires this event. So set player inventory event. This is a terrible name for this event. It's really setting up the player and not really necessarily the inventory. But anything that wants to know what anything that wants to know what the player is, this is the event that's called. So something with the camera zoom. So this is again, this is referencing the game data because I'm storing the zoom level so that when you go to a new screen, it doesn't reset where you were zoomed in. It keeps it there. And then setting the time for that. You got encounter set up. If there is no game world, it just creates all the grass. If there is, it's going to set all the floor. It's going to set the floor for this map that we're currently on to that terrain, the world data terrain. So if we were in the grass tile, it would be grass. Desert would be desert. So it can add that as the floors. Then it sets up the map for the map controller. Now that we have the floor, so it can create all the floors, creates all the entities. Or does it create all the entities at this point? Maybe not. This is adding quest. If we don't have a quest already, it checks that. Then we're going to add a quest. If this is a village and we haven't created the village yet. So actually this is if the map hasn't been created at all. So it doesn't create the map until you actually get to that screen. So if it's already created the map, it's not going to create the village. If it's a village, it's going to create it. Random encounter items, those would be like trees and things. And then, let's see. This checks to make sure, this will add enemies or animals and make sure that's not a village. Creating all the floor tiles, creating the map entities, then creating all the characters, And then add in the player, same with the field of view, all that other stuff. Movement system, um, placing items. Is this being called at all? No, 0 references. Place and counter items. I had originally used this, but I took this away because originally this was what creates the uh, all the items now is the map controller instead of this. This sets up, checks the AI of all the entities that are in the acting entities. If it has an AI part, then it's going to figure out the if the AI part is hostile, then it sets the target to the player. That's all that this does. Um, Again, I probably could have done this a little bit better with the part itself or something. Um, this is just allows you to show the map. This is creating the quest or setting up a quest. It doesn't actually create one, but it sets up the treasure. See right here. I think I hard coded that. Yeah, see right here. I just hard coded artifacts table. And then based upon the level of the character, we're going to have a random table for what type of monster you're going to encounter at that quest location. And then creates the monster and adds the monster. So this is what I forgot to do. All right, so that's all that, showing the world. The world generator is just a pearl of noise. It has a moisture map, a moisture, elevation, and temperature. And so it creates different pearl of noise for that, and based upon the temperature and the elevation and the moisture, it picks the type of terrain. Um, it could do more. Like I was originally having like jungle tiles and the Arctic because there is actually an equator in the game. Uh, but I took away the winter in the jungle because I figured I wouldn't have enough time to do more stuff. But it 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 can do it. Uh, I just took out that block of code. All right. I think that's about it. I got an inventory system here. Actually, the movement system's kind of neat too because instead of a lot of times when my previous rogue game, every every controller, whether it's the player or the different AI, they all had their own kind of script called character move, and so that script was on every single one. And this is kind of like maybe the way to do things a little bit better. Now I have a system called the move system, and basically the entity sends itself to the movement system, and then that's how it moves. So it can take any entity and move it instead of having the entity. Now I could still do it. You could still do it that way. I don't think it would be a big deal, but yeah, this just is all about the inventory UI. Again, the UI, I try to not do any singletons for the UI, so instead, it's a lot of different events are fired off. So like here's the on equipped item, on, you know, on equipped item. So I can have a part that gets the same event as the UI, and so the UI would do its thing. Um, and actually, this I think does both, but that's probably not good. This should probably just focus more on actually displaying it, but this looks like it's actually um, removing it also. So the part itself probably could have removed it. Uh, Opening containers on shop, because the shop has an inventory, and so it would show it. And that's going to look a little different. And actually, if I go into that scene, I've been probably talking long enough, but I'm already in the encounter scene, I believe. So the encounter scene, if I open up the canvas, like here's they're really all the same thing. I probably could have like here's this one, and here's the shop. They're about identical. They use the same script, which I don't know where it would be at. Maybe it's just in the canvas inventory UI. So they're using the same script. Just based on the script, they're going to show different things on the item. So I do have some prefabs, and one is an item panel. And here, it's the same item panel for whether you're shopping or whether you're in a container or whether you're looking at your inventory. I just hide different buttons. So, like in the equipment one, we have two buttons that we can use if it was in your own inventory, equip and drop. But then if you were in a container, looking at the container inventory, it would hide the equip, it would hide the drop, and just show the take. For the shop, it would just show the buy and sell. If it was a food, it would show the eat button there. So, yeah, a lot of different things. Um, it's crazy how much I was able to get done in a short time. Just a few animations here. A lot of things are loaded from this resource. So I have different sprite sheets here that loads. UI sprite sheet, a world sprite sheet. Then here's my two XML files that I'm using. I could probably have like more for different things. Just different systems. Here's like the Bell system, AI pathfinding. Again, I had like the pathfinding from the other one. I had to just tweak things a little bit. So here again, we have a Bell event. And then when we're registering the on attack event, and in this case, it gets that event. It figures out, okay, who's the attacker from the event, who's the defender, what was the weapon. Of course, I don't really need that there because I could just get it from the attacker, because that's what I do with the defender. I just get the armor. We get attack stat and the damage, and based upon the weapon, determines what stat we're using, whether we're going to use the strength or dexterity. And then we Hmm. Hmm. You guys seeing what I'm seeing here? It looks like the attack damage. Oh, no, sorry. Uh, this attack damage, whether it's melee or range, it uses the weapon here, the minimum and maximum damage, and it times it with the attack stat, which is set based upon whether it was melee or dexterity. So that's why this is probably a little bit too much. It should probably be. Now this was kind of good because it was a way for me to, like for the monsters, how much they do damage. I can just say, okay, I want this monster to do 10 points of damage each time. And then if I give it a weapon, it gives it a little bit of randomness to it. I'll probably end up changing this to where it's more random, or having less effect of it. And then I think both of these stats need to have like a secondary function, or you'll always just, if you're using melee weapons, you'll never put points in dexterity, but maybe dexterity will help with dodging, and strength will probably help with, if I put in a weight system, would help with that, and maybe some other things. But yeah, that's how it determines how much you're doing damage, and then it figures out the armor, and it takes a percentage. So this is like a percent here of your armor stats. So if your armor was 3, it would be 3 out of 20. Or how about 10? If it was 10, that's half. So that'd be 50%. And we would times that with the attack damage, so it would take half off. Right? I don't know if this is correct. This is not correct. Okay, so that doesn't seem right. This should actually, this makes it to where your armor stat, the lesser value it is, the more. Oh, no. This is right. It's timesing it, and then it subtracts it. Yeah, this is actually correct. So let's say it was 20 damage. 20 times, let's say it was 1%, or even 10%. 10% of 20 would be 2, so then it would subtract 2. If it was 100%, it would take all of it away, actually. So if this was 1, it would be 20, and then, so if you ever got to 20, you would never get damage if your armor stat was that. I don't know if it's possible to get 20, but maybe if you got like the golden stuff. I don't think so, because I don't think there's any armor that's 10. But then it does all this stuff. This is for the attack log. And it creates an event that sends it to that script. Actually adds it to the battle result event. It adds the string to it, attack log. So like right here, attack log. This says whether it's successful or not, whether the attack was successful. This says who's the defender, who's the attacker, and then what was the attack log for it. I could probably move all of this right here to the attack log script instead of having it here. It makes more sense to do it there because I'm sending the information anyways. Or at least I could. I could send the attack. I don't know why I only send the defender. But yeah, all right. So I think I've rambled enough. I think that was everything I wanted to say. It was challenging. I do want to do more to the game because I really didn't get it to where what I wanted it to be. I really wanted the gods to be more involved in the game. I just didn't do that, and a lot of that was time. I actually did more of the god stuff on the very last day of programming, just because I felt like I had to get all the other systems done first before the gods could interact with those systems, and so really all of these other systems took a lot longer than I had anticipated. So, well, I hope you enjoyed this little talk. I know it wasn't short, but I did want to showcase a little bit of the process and the programming I did. And yeah, hope you downloaded the game and tried it out, and any kind of feedback would be neat. I am pretty proud of what I did create. It's kind of neat that I made this open world game. It randomly generates the world and the layouts of the village, which all the villages look the same. But you can visit all the different villages, different terrains, a lot of different monsters, even though they don't have like special abilities or anything like that. But they at least have different stats and they look different. You can level up your characters, has RPG elements, and then the gods kind of add a little bit of flavor to the game. So every time you play the game, so if I go to my scenes here, I didn't really talk about god creation, but it's kind of self-explanatory. You know, just uses those random tables, and based upon the string, you know, this is a string right here called goat, and so then after I select that one, it's going to set up your player stat, and or actually finds that entity template, and it changes the AI value of is hostile to false, even though goat is already there, and then it takes the XP that you would get from killing it and subtract changes it, or it might have like a god bonus. The XP might have a value called god bonus, and it uses that to determine how much XP you get from it. So yeah, got a big leather helmet, got a heavy steel, got intelligent, large meat. I probably shouldn't use the word intelligent here. Um, Agonizing spike helmet, god of wandering soup, god of foolish mountain lion. So it just randomly picks one of these, and then randomizes some kind of adjective, and that's how you get your name. Here's the chili golden helmet, round leather helmet, glorious soup. But yeah, you select, and then you can add 8 points. I've already been playing the game quite a bit, and just probably dumping all of them into dexterity. That's probably the best way to go. Or endurance. If I do that, I click begin game, and then pick here. That shouldn't have been open. And if I can buy a bow, I believe we have one. Alright. I did fix the eating. What's my thing? Soup. Buy some soup. And buy some bread. Let's see if I can find a bow. Let's go to the bow. You can spend, I've already spent 1 day already. Oh look, it's me, my twin. I'll buy a bow. Maybe the time here. But I kind of want the time to go by quickly. Oh my gosh, we got like all my twins. Let's see, what am I going to do? I'm going to talk to this guy and just get, let's see, I can buy that leather helmet, which probably wasn't worth it. Alright, and equip that. So probably I'm OP already. You know, with the bow. Range is kind of OP. Okay, that's going to show every time because, I mean, they're not going to be able to really, since there's no missing, like there needs to be missing in this game. Okay, but archers are not fun. All right, so yeah, I'll just dump more into dexterity. Let's kill this chicken. What was my animal? Oh, the crab. Yeah. Man, could you imagine if you had like speed and dex? I think that might be the best combo. Because you can move in close, shoot them, and then move away probably in 1 round. I might add like a minimum and maximum range so that if you can't attack within the range, so if they close in on you, you're going to need to switch your weapon. Like I said, just add dex. But this is actually like I said, I'm pretty proud of it. I mean, it's probably not different than any other kind of game, but And I think the good thing is it is pretty easy. So in a very short time, you can explore all the game has to offer right now, and I think that's good for a jam. Because there's a lot of games that were made, and I bet you a lot of people are probably playing different games. And so if this was just too difficult, they might just quit. Yeah, you're on the rock, so can't hit you. Where am I going? Oh, I can't go any further. Why not? Where am I? Oh, you know, I was looking. I thought I was up here for some reason. Look, I'm already at the ocean. Yeah, I'd never added water to the game. I do have a sprite for water, but I never added water. I could have randomly just picked some tiles to be water tiles, but I think that would. I don't know if that would have looked good or make sense. I actually have in my map creator. It creates. It does create rivers, and they flow down from mountains. Or what it does, it randomly picks a tile that is at a lower elevation, and it goes in that direction. So there are rivers, you just can't see them on the map because I did not include them in the game. But that would have been cool to have some rivers, and then you could have had like, you know, flying creatures that actually. Let's do some speed. So yeah, I'm like OP. Kill this chicken. Of course, it doesn't help that my XP stat doesn't really work well. Ooh, see if we can see this guy should be kind of difficult, right? He's a giant, and actually it shows over here. That's something I didn't really fix. Look at that, one shot. Guess he only has 25 HP. But that's something I could have. Ooh, look at that, no problem. Oh, maybe he doesn't have 25 HP. I wonder how much HP he has. So we need to give him 100. So I think that's the only way you can make the game harder. Is change the amount of HP enemies have, so you're not one-shotting them. And I probably need to do. I need to have stats adjusted based upon level. So maybe I would say like this rabbit's a level 2, so it knows. Okay, at level 2, this should be your stats. Okay, here's an archer. Let me just wait. Q for wait. Bam. Since my speed is getting better. But I should stop playing. Alright, well that was long enough. I'm going to stop it. Thanks again for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time.